Fitzgibbons and Craig Laundy. Jason Falinski is standing in for the good minister this afternoon. Thank you for...
Not that anyone can stand in for him.
Happy to have Jason here, but where is Craig today?
Where is Craig?
Craig's never given up a media opportunity in his life. He's in the fetal position in his office.
You, Joel. Avoiding... He's never given up a media.
That's true.
That's true.
He's in his office avoiding incoming on Barnaby Joyce. That's why Craig is not here today.
Before we get to Barnaby Joyce, and we did touch on it because the story had just broken a week ago, Joel, but the news this afternoon, Christina Keneally, the New South Wales Parliament have finally given the tick for her to take the Senate seat here in Canberra. I was just saying before the break she'll probably be sworn in tomorrow. What do you think?
Oh, well, we're hoping, but there's a protracted process there. She gets sworn in 3:45 tonight, so appointed by the Parliament 3:45 today. Then there's this crazy transmission of letters from the State Parliament to the Governor, from the Governor to the Governor-General, from the Governor-General to the President of the Senate.
Now,
priority post.
I'm sure it's got to be in a solid cylinder or something. Carried by the black rod or something. But the point here, David, is that this could have been done last week. The State Parliament, Gladys Berejiklian could have made sure...
Why do you think they did
Well, and I'll tell you why, because we're now scrambling in the hope that we can swear her in tomorrow because we're short a member for Senate estimates. And that doesn't sound much, but...
You're in the Senate though, aren't you?
Yeah, no, I'm talking about resources. We need every person on the ground for Senate estimates.
You've struggled this far without Christina Keneally. You can't struggle any longer.
We are looking forward to the injection of talent.
What is Sky News going to do without Christina? I mean, she has created a void.
Undoubtedly, but you're seriously saying you desperately need her for Senate estimates?
Oh, she'll be a very significant addition to our team, and we need resources for Senate estimates. We need every senator we can muster, and they're denying us one by delaying this. It's petty.
So what are the other 29 senators on the side doing?
Well, you guys have got
28.
You guys have so many failings to pursue.
We have so many more senators.
We need all the senators.
Oh, you need all the senators. Right. So what have they been doing up until now?
Well, okay, but just my boss did actually tweet a picture earlier today of Christina Keneally handing in the Sky News badges. She has finally ceased.
And let me say,
commitment to Sky
we'll be gathering to have dinner with her tonight, and we're really excited. She will make a very significant contribution.
All right. And will those Senate estimates be pursuing? Wait for this segue. Barnaby Joyce.
I'm going to answer that. I think they will be. Okay. I think the Labor Party is so bereft of policy. That's the only thing they've got left to talk about. Unless Christina can think of something.
I believe the odds are as short as Ken O'Dowd becoming the next leader of the National Party after his performance today in the House. He's odds on.
In all seriousness, you've gone after Barnaby Joyce for 3 days in Parliament now. Do you think he should resign?
Well, you know, it depends what your objective is. You know, if I was Malcolm Turnbull, I'd want him to go because obviously he's dragging the government down on a daily basis. If you're the Labor Party, you don't want him to go because every day he stays is a good day for the Labor Party. If your main objective is to maintain the integrity of the Parliament, the Westminster system, well then, you know, your judgment would have to be he should go.
So in all seriousness, Labor wants him to go?
Well, look, I don't mind talking about my own past experience. It was about 9 years ago I resigned as Defence Minister. Why did I resign? A misdemeanour. I organised a meeting between my brother and Defence officials about a matter for which there were no contracts pending, no tenders. It was just a conversation about a concept. And when I checked the Ministerial Code of Conduct, it said basically that if there was even a possible perception that there could be a conflict, I wasn't conscious I was doing the wrong thing, but when I reread that, I came to the conclusion that technically I was in breach of the Ministerial Code of Conduct because the possible perception. And I wasn't prepared to ask Kevin Rudd to stand in question time and argue that I wasn't in breach of the code when clearly in my own view I was, and I wasn't prepared to damage my own government. Now Barnaby Joyce is doing, and Malcolm Turnbull they're just doing the opposite. They're finding this technicality based on a definition about whether someone is a partner or a girlfriend or whatever it might be, and standing their ground. So you know, I don't mind using my own case to paint a contrast of the standards.
This has been perhaps the main point of criticism here, Jason, hasn't it, about Barnaby Joyce, the appointment of Vicky Campion to various offices. Now, technically, if she's not a partner of Barnaby Joyce, that's not in breach, but there is a perception there amongst some that they were.
Yeah. So what we've just had is Joel admit that there has been no breach of the ministerial code of conduct.
I didn't know such thing.
That there's only been a perception of a breach.
No, I didn't know such thing.
Now, if there is something to be gained from this, it is this, that this place should be based on facts. It should be based on the code and the law and not perception thereof.
So has it been breached, in fact?
Well, the Labor Party has had more than a week and 3 days in question time to assert and set out the case of where there's been a breach in the code of conduct. They have failed to do so.
But in your mind, has the code been broken?
I have seen no evidence that the code has been broken.
All right, but that hinges on whether they're partners or not, doesn't it?
No, well, does it?
Is that why? Because the code says you can't employ a partner in a fellow minister's office.
Yeah, that's true. And the fact is that, as Barnaby pointed out, she was not his partner when that occurred. Now, the Labor Party has had the opportunity to point out whatever it is that they believe has been breached in the code of conduct. It's not up for me to come up with a case.
What I'm saying, David, what I'm saying is that in my case, I took an expansive view of the code, and I applied the mistake I'd made to the code, and I decided, for abundance of caution and not to embarrass the government, that I would go. And it's very hard going. Barnaby Joyce and Malcolm Turnbull have just done the opposite. They've applied the strictest interpretation that they could possibly find and drilled it down to this definition about. So they're admitting he's done it all.
No, they're
admitting he's done it all. He's breached it in every sense.
He has not breached it in every sense.
But because she was technically his partner until a later date, he hasn't breached it. It's a really bad look.
And again, this may not be technically any breach, but should ministers live in apartments that have been donated for free?
Well, look, they should declare it, which is what Barnaby's done. I mean, you can't ask for more than that, frankly speaking. But we are talking now, how many angels can dance on the head of a pin? We could be talking about jobs. We could be talking about wages. We could be talking about how to improve Australia and the economy. Instead, all the Labor Party wants to talk about, and David just quietly Sky News, is Barnaby Joyce.
You don't think people are interested in this?
No, I don't. I think people want to talk about the things that matter to them, and I know this doesn't matter to them.
You don't think some of this stuff gets right up the nose of voters when they see a staff member that a senior politician is obviously having a relationship with being moved from one office to another, high-paying jobs. You see this same senior minister being given a free pad to live in, a luxury apartment. You don't think people care about that?
I don't think that when people are given a choice about caring about whether in my electorate they can get to places faster because the roads are so congested.
Sure, they care about that too.
I think that's
more than one thing is
you are living in a bubble.
This is the... Well, we're both living in bubbles, let's face it. It's called Canberra. The fact of the matter is that people want to talk about the things that matter to them in their lives, and this sort of stuff is just really...
But Jason's just reinforcing my point. We're not talking about the things that really matter because, people are digging in, and you made the point, it's not just about the definition, it's about jobs being created for a person with in these circumstances. Remembering this was a highly paid assistant advisor's job in the office of the
senior advisor job.
I was the chief government whip. I was the chief government whip and didn't have the luxury of 2 media advisors. And I don't think anyone in my office was paid a salary at that level. It's pretty. I mean, it's not just about these technicalities.
This is just a concoction of the Labor Party because they have nothing else to talk about.
I'm talking facts.
They are now coming up with more and more reasons to keep talking about this because they don't want to talk about things that matter to other Australians.
No, we're very happy to talk about all your failing policy.
Then start doing it.
Well, I think we've been doing plenty of that too.
A final one on it. Are you comfortable with Barnaby Joyce being acting Prime Minister next week?
That's a matter for the National Party, but yes, I'm comfortable.
All right. You don't think it's going to be embarrassing in any way?
No.
You don't get any feedback from your constituents about it?
I've not had any feedback from my constituents about it.
All right, and you would expect him to... you've had none?
No.
All right, and you would expect him to do what acting Prime Ministers normally do and make themselves available to the people?
I know that Barnaby will discharge his duties with honour and appropriateness.
Right. I don't believe that in the last week Jason hasn't been to a supermarket or a pub or a golf course or to a church or somewhere where someone hasn't, even in a light-hearted manner, raised the Barnaby Joyce thing with him. I think he should reflect on that statement. I think that could be a bit of a porky, mate.
Well, sorry. Okay.
You're not changing the...
Oh, no.
I mean, Joel's right.
People have had
I'm glad we clarified.
Statements to say, but
I'm glad we clarified that.
I'm glad we did too.
All right. What are the funny statements? Are they saying...
Probably not for air. This is a family-friendly program, after all.
I definitely rest my case.
All right. Let's move on then. Today, the Prime Minister is, well, in fact, today and yesterday, made it pretty clear his position is against any sort of elected Indigenous advisory body. Labor backs one. But, Joel, what is Labor actually proposing?
Well, this is really disappointing from Malcolm Turnbull. I think this is the right wing of the party dictating policy to him.
What's Labor proposing?
In terms of detail, not all that much, David. I mean, we've set down some principles about formalising a voice for Indigenous Australians, and Linda Burney has talked a lot about what that might look at. But again, Malcolm finds himself on the wrong side of this debate. I was here for one of the beyond the Kevin Rudd's apology. One of the most moving moments in my time here was when we decided to read the stories in the Bringing Them Home report in the Parliament on a nightly basis, and people were just literally in tears. I remember the WIC vote.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Sorry, I just want to say that I remember the WIC debate when the Howard government found itself on the wrong side of the debate.
But on the wrong, in this context, on the wrong side of what? As you acknowledge, there's no real detail around what Labor's suggesting here.
Well, the Closing the Gap report shows that we're still struggling to meet our aspirations, and we have to look at what more we can do. And formalising a voice for Indigenous Australians is an important part about that. And we don't want to talk too much about that detail, because we want the government of the day, the other parties, to come and work with us.
They're not proposing it. Labor is.
Yeah, but we can get a consensus. It's like the Murray-Darling Basin Plan. You have the concept. And if both parties work together and then you negotiate...
Work it out in government, is that the idea?
Well, we will work out in government, and I hope with the cooperation with the then opposition, but we're ready to start now, having the conversation, allowing the government of the day to have an input so we can get an arrangement which...
But you've got to give Indigenous Australians, put a lot of thought into this, some respect here and tell them what you're actually proposing. Because what if after the election you come up with something that's... They don't like it all.
I can tell you, David, no Indigenous Australian is in any way concerned about what we've announced this week.
Well,
in fact, they have welcomed it.
Yeah, because it doesn't have any detail. Is it going to be 200 people? Is it going to be 50
They know what our objectives are.
Are they going to sit here in Canberra like a chamber?
They know what our objectives are, and the less public conflict we can have over shaping this thing, the better for everyone. So Malcolm Turnbull should just accept that this is the right thing to do and come on board and work with us.
Okay, but he's saying it's a very vague idea, that we don't know what they do.
That's his excuse for opposing it.
Well,
the right wing of the party...
We don't know what it would do. We don't know how it would be constituted, elected,
It would
appointed.
formally provide Indigenous Australians with a voice. That's what it would do.
To do what?
And there's plenty of time for the detail, and I still hope that we can develop the detail in a cooperative way, in a bipartisan way, so we can minimise conflict, because there's been enough conflict.
Jason, there has been a lot of conflict, but there does seem to be a fair degree of support in principle for the idea, as Joel says, of some sort of advisory body. Do you agree with that?
No, I don't. I think that obviously it was something that came out of the statement from Uluru. The Prime Minister's made it clear that as a matter of democratic principle, we don't think that there should be another chamber, which is what we believe it would become, that it excludes other Australians from serving in. It's pretty much, and as the Prime Minister said today in question time, democracy is a contest of ideas. It's open to the Labor Party to put their ideas forward to the Australian people.
But if this, and Labor's not putting detail on it, but if it were to be,
there's still over a year to go before the next election.
Yeah, and if there were to be more specifics around it, some sort of organisation, body, elected, but limited to a certain number, who advise on specific legislation that's spelled out in the Charter. What's wrong with that?
Well, you're asking me to comment on a hypothetical, and that's not
he's
possible,
asked you to comment
really.
on a principle.
Well, the principle is that we don't believe that there should be another chamber of Parliament.
No, David, no one is talking about this. This is an argument run by the extreme right to put fear into people's minds.
Extreme right?
No one. Well, no, I didn't actually.
No, you're saying an argument. I'm running an argument with the extreme right.
I'm concerned you're backing them to politicise this and to scare people away.
Well, one of the fundamentals of conservatism is
it's divide and conquer.
is not that, but is to progress cautiously because of unintended consequences. This is a big idea. We believe that there is a principle at stake here. The Prime Minister's made it very clear that if the Labor Party wants to put it to the next election, they should do so, and hopefully with more detail than they have available at the moment.
David, fundamental to conservatism is to just keep everything the same, and that's okay if you're doing all right.
Just read a
but
bit
it's not all. It's not okay for those who are facing challenges.
We're about to go into philosophy.
Yeah, okay. Look,
on Sky News.
We've got to go to a break in a moment. But Labor, are you still comfortable with this guy being in the Parliament?
Well, I think they should all be referred. I think anyone in doubt should just be referred to the High Court and let the judges decide. And we offered that some time ago, and of course Malcolm ran for the hills. So.
But is he,
I've got no. I think Jason's a lovely bloke, but he should be tested. We can't.
Why?
We can't maintain faith and confidence in our Westminster system when these things are hanging over everyone's head. They should just all go to the High Court. Let the High Court sort it out.
Should we all go then, Joel?
Well, I think you'd be wasting money if you sent me there.
Why is sending one is not wasting money, but sending 100 is?
Oh, how about we have a little committee of people who can just vet them and say, look, that one's that would be a waste of money sending Joel Fitzgibbons there, but Jason, okay, probably should send that off there.
Well, as long as David's the chair of this little committee.
Well, it's an interesting idea. What a bipartisan committee that.
Oh, look, I'm thinking on my feet now, but you could have it learned. You could have an Toomey. Or someone just goes through them and say Fitzgibbons, and go, no, he goes over there.
This is the idea.
And this is
that was proposed and dismissed. But look, we should spell out. You have tabled your legal advice. Says you're fine. Labor's.
He's belated legal advice.
No, that was done. That was done in time for the.
Well, it's more than Mark Dreyfus has done, your Shadow Attorney General.
But
more than half.
Legal advice, you know the story.
More than half your
you know the story, Dave. You get 10 lawyers in a room, you get 10 different opinions.
Oh, here we go. So,
if you try hard.
Why did you ask
there's only one arbiter. There's only one arbiter, and that's the High Court. Just let them make the decision.
But you're obviously not keen on that happening, even if it would mean the likes of Labor's.
Why doesn't he want that to happen?
The truth of the matter is the only reason that we're still talking about my citizenship is because Labor's got so many people on their own side under so many clouds that they will throw up as much dust as they possibly can.
You don't want it to go to the High Court.
If it wasn't me, it would be someone else.
You don't want it to go to the High Court because you know there's some chance you'll lose.
No, I don't want it to go to the High Court. It's a waste of time and money. And frankly, you don't have
to bring your own senior counsel. You don't have to turn up, mate. You just.
Oh, Joel. Right. So no one pays those barristers. They do for.
Bottom line is, Joel, you know, the legal advice is mixed, but with Susan Lamb, she's a dual citizen.
I've just said to you, I think they should just all go to the High Court.
She is a dual citizen.
I think they should just go to the High Court. You're making that assertion. I haven't followed that in that detail, but let the judges decide. All
right, we better go to a break. Joel Fitzgibbons, Jason Falinski, good to talk to both of you. Thank you very much for that. We'll take a break. Back with more. Stay with us.